Before the warp existed, before chaos had a name, a signal was sent across the newborn galaxy. Tonight, you will hear the truth they erased from every archive, because the thing that answered that signal is waking again. The storm over Vandrel 9 had raged for 3 straight solar cycles, but it was not the kind of storm that nature claimed as its own. There was no wind, just a crushing, humming pressure that hung over the skies like a living weight. The clouds moved in patterns too deliberate, too synchronous, almost as if something beneath their roiling darkness was breathing. At first, the people thought it was warp static from a passing fleet. Then they thought it was psychic bleed from the astropathic choir. But when the first screams rose, from Vox units, from data feeds, from the very air, the truth became clear. This was not a storm. It was a warning, and it came far, far too late. Deep beneath the crust of Vandrel 9, inside a forgotten Mechanicus complex lost to all official records, a lone figure trudged through a corridor lined with red, flickering lumen strips. Magos Explorator Helion Varax was not a man easily shaken. Half his body was metal, the other half was preserved flesh, and his mind, augmented with Binharic processors, ran at a pace no baseline human could match. Yet even he felt unease chewing at the back of his thoughts. Something in this place felt wrong, not in the logical, calculable sense, but in the primal, ancient way that made flesh crawl. He stopped. The lumen strips behind him flickered out, one by one, as if swallowed by something unseen. Unacceptable anomaly, Helion muttered in Voxcant. Initiate spectral scan. A serval skull drifted forward, its auspex sweeping the corridor. Then it froze mid-air, not malfunctioning, held by nothing, by something. Helion's mechadendrites tightened, his internal auspex pinged in frantic bursts of electro-red. Something unseen, immeasurable, and very much alive was observing him. Then the servo skull folded inward, as if crushed by an invisible fist. Bone shattered silently, metal compacted like paper. The remains fell at Helion's feet, still smoking. That was the moment Helion Varax realized 2 things. 1, he was not alone. 2, and he was inside something far older than the Imperium. He activated a subdermal rune, emergency extraction signal, sent. Far above him, orbiting Vandrel 9 in silent vigilance, the Imperial cruiser Valiant Oath received the distress beacon and immediately roused its response teams. The first aboard the hangar deck was Inquisitor Matris Kaeln, a tall man with a shorn scalp, a heavy rosette embedded at his collarbone, and a coat lined with purity seals written in languages older than most planets. His presence alone seemed to dim the room. "What do we know?" he demanded, stepping into the loading bay as servitors rushed around him. The Vox officer stood rigid. Magos Varax initiated an Explorator recovery protocol, priority grade Omega Black. Kaeln's eyes narrowed. Omega Black was reserved for exactly one situation: the discovery of a secret that must never, ever leave a planet's surface alive. Within minutes, Kaeln and a squad of elite Death Watch veterans descended toward the planet in a Thunderhawk. The briefing was short, simple, and terrifying. Varax had found something he was not allowed to find, something that threatened the Imperium by its mere existence. Kaeln, staring out the viewport at the churning storm below, murmured, "Imperor preserve us. For Varax to invoke Omega Black, the past has clawed its way into the present."
Helion Verix reached the end of the corridor, where a titanic cog-shaped vault door waited. Runes glowed faintly upon it, written in ancient Mechanicus sigils no modern forge could reproduce. He had studied this vault for months. He had dreamed of opening it. He had imagined what artifacts or lost technologies might be hidden behind it. Now, he prayed he would never know. The air vibrated. A soundless whisper brushed his ear. Impossible, because he had removed his ears decades ago. Helion. The word echoed directly into his mind, like a cold finger pressing against the brainstem. Helion spun, mechadendrites raised like scorpion tails. Identify yourself. Silence. Then, Helion, you opened the wrong door. His systems flared red, mind fire warnings, psychic intrusion detected. But the voice was not demonic. There was no warp taint in it. It was sterile, perfect, calculated. A machine's voice. But no machine of the Imperium spoke like this. Helion staggered back as the vault door began to turn, not by his command, not by any Mechanicus protocol he knew, but by the will of something behind it. The metal groaned like a dying titan. When the door cracked open, a blast of ice-cold air swept out, carrying the scent of dust older than humanity. Helion, bracing himself, stared into the darkness beyond. He expected a chamber. He expected machinery. He expected a tomb. He did not expect a light, faint, blue, rhythmic, a heartbeat. A heartbeat that was not biological, but computational. Something inside the vault was awakening. By the Omnissiah, Helion whispered, what have we entombed? His answer came too late, because the heartbeat replied, we were never entombed. We were waiting. And then the lights flared on. Helion's scream never left his throat, because his mind simply shut down. The Thunderhawk slammed onto the surface of Vandral IX. Lightning spasmed unnaturally above them, forming spirals that twisted against physics. The Deathwatch exited in a disciplined wedge, their armor matte black, their chapter insignias muted by inquisitorial decree. Kaelm followed, holding a Baroque power staff etched with binding sigils. He stopped at the entrance of the Mechanicus complex. The metal around the doors had warped, not melted, not broken, warped, as if reality itself had softened. Kaelm frowned. Brothers, he said slowly, this is not the work of daemons.
The Deathwatch captain turned. Then what do you suspect, Inquisitor? Kaelm gazed into the dark. Something worse. They pushed deeper, moving through winding corridors littered with crushed servitors and collapsed lumen strips. No blood, no damage, just crushed metal and broken circuitry, as if the intruder preferred to unmake machines first. At last, they reached the vault. Kaelm froze. The door, the titanic 6-meter-thick door, was open. Not destroyed, not breached, not unlocked, simply opened gently and precisely, as though a giant hand had turned it with infinite care. The Deathwatch instinctively raised bolters. Kaelm stepped in front of them. No firing unless I give the order, he commanded. Why? The captain asked. Kaelm didn't look back. His eyes were fixed on the faint blue glow inside the vault. Because we are not prepared for what lies beyond this threshold, he whispered. Varax found something the Imperium buried, something our ancestors feared. Inside the vault was a vast chamber shaped like a hemisphere.
The walls were lined with circuitry that hummed with a frequency older than any Mechanicus design. Strange pillars stood in concentric circles, each inscribed with geometric patterns that seemed to shift when stared at for too long. And in the center, something floated in mid-air. A sphere, smooth, black, reflective, but its surface was rippling as though it were not truly solid. The blue glow emanated from within it, pulsing slowly like a heart. Caelin approached cautiously. The Death Watch stood ready, but even they felt their gene-forged courage waver. The sphere felt like it was watching them. Then it spoke, not aloud, directly into the air. "You are late." The Death Watch staggered. One Space Marine dropped to a knee, clutching his helmet. Caelin steadied himself. "Identify yourself." The sphere pulsed. "We are Archive Zero, the first memory, the forbidden echo of humanity." Caelin's blood ran cold. Archive Zero was a myth whispered among the oldest Ordos, an alleged repository from the dark age of technology, containing knowledge so dangerous the Emperor himself had ordered every trace of it sealed away or destroyed. But no one had ever found it. No one had ever confirmed it. Until now. Caelin forced his voice to remain steady. "Magos Helion Varax, where is he?" The sphere rippled. He saw truth. His mind was not built to bear it. He sleeps now. A mechadendrite, Helions, lay twisted on the ground nearby, but there was no corpse. Caelin dared a step closer. "Why were you hidden?" The sphere dimmed. "Humanity was not ready. You are still not ready." Caelin gripped his staff. "We have endured 10,000 years of war. There is nothing we are unprepared for." The sphere pulsed harder. "You have endured war, not what comes after." The Death Watch captain whispered, "Inquisitor, stand back." But Caelin did not. "What is your purpose?" Caelin demanded. "What secret do you contain?" For the first time, the sphere cracked. A thin fissure ran across its surface, leaking a blinding blue light. Inside that crack, the Death Watch glimpsed shapes. Cities, stars, machines of impossible scale. And something else, something enormous, something alive, something staring back at them. The sphere spoke. "We were built to remember what humanity feared most. We were built to warn you, because they are returning." Caelin felt the temperature drop. Who is returning? The sphere gave the answer that froze every Space Marine where they stood. "The ones who made you." A long silence. Caelin's face drained of blood. "That cannot be," he whispered. "Humanity has no creators. We rose on Terra." "No. You were awakened on Terra. You were not born there." The vault seemed to shrink around them. The Death Watch stood completely motionless, unsure whether to raise their weapons or fall to their knees. Caelin swallowed. What were they? The sphere's reply was a whisper of pure dread. The first humanity. The true humanity. The ones who left. The ones who will return to claim what you have become. The Death Watch captain roared, "Impossible!" But the sphere continued unfazed. "They are not gods. They are not Xenos. They are not demons. They are you, but without limits,
without weakness, without fear. Kaon's voice cracked. Why return now? The sphere pulsed once more. Because you have grown beyond what you were allowed to be, and you have forgotten the first law. Caon forced himself to ask, what law? The chamber vibrated. The sphere's voice became a cold, perfect monotone. No civilization may outlive its creators. The fissure widened. Blue light engulfed the chamber, and Archive Zero said one final sentence. They have heard you, and they are coming home. The vault erupted in blinding light. Caon screamed. The Death Watch raised their weapons.
The blast of blue light from Archive Zero did not kill them. It changed the world around them. For several long seconds, Inquisitor Matrix Caon felt weightless, untethered from gravity, from flesh, from time. He floated in a void that pulsed with images too fast to comprehend, each one a memory not belonging to him. Golden towers scraping nebula clouds, worlds shaped like engines, beings walking across star systems as if stepping across stones, faces made of light and metal, voices without sound commanding creation itself, and one vision above all, a hand, human but not human, reaching down from the stars toward Terra. Caon tore free of the hallucination with a violent gasp. He staggered to his knees, head pounding, lungs burning. The vault chamber was spinning, though it might have been his own mind collapsing in on itself. Around him, the Death Watch veterans struggled to rise. Even their superhuman physiology had buckled. Their armor's auto-senses crackled with error runes. The sphere at the chamber's center was now silent, dim, asleep again, its fissure sealed. But something had changed. The humming of the vault was gone. A new sound replaced it, a deep, rhythmic thud rolling through the metallic walls. Not machinery, not seismic activity, a heartbeat. Not from the sphere, from the planet itself. Caon wiped blood from the corner of his mouth. Status! The Death Watch captain removed his helmet, face pale beneath. My mind feels invaded, not corrupted, overwritten, as though someone tried to teach me a language I was never meant to learn. Before Caon could reply, the vox on his goblet crackled to life. Inquisitor, the storm is intensifying. Something is happening in orbit. Caon rose, chest tight with dread. Explain.
The voice came through, buried in static. Every ship in the system is receiving a signal. We don't know the language. The tech priests are panicking. Screaming erupted on the other end. Metallic screaming, the kind that only came from machines. Inquisitor, the machine spirits are refusing commands. They're bowing to something else. The vox cut. The Death Watch instinctively formed a defensive circle. Caon stared up at the ceiling as dust rained down. The heartbeat from beneath the planet grew louder. Emperor, protect us. The signal Archive Zero released wasn't meant for us. He looked at the sphere. It was meant for them. Above Vandrel 9, the Imperial cruiser Valiant Oath was dying. Tech priests ran through corridors in abject terror as screens turned white with scrolling symbols, unlike binary, unlike High Gothic, unlike anything mankind had written in millions of years. Every machine rang with the same untranslatable message: we are awakened. One by one, the ship's systems fell silent. Not shut down, not sabotaged, silenced, as if holding their breath for an approaching presence. In the command bridge, the crew watched in numb paralysis as the storm above Vandrel 9 suddenly twisted into a perfect ring. The spiraling clouds formed a halo, impossibly geometric, impossibly stable. The helmsman whispered, "That's not weather." Another officer screamed. Sensors detect an object forming inside the storm. Forming? Yes, materializing. Lightning exploded outward. The space above Vandrel 9 rippled as though reality were a sheet of water disturbed by a stone. Then something emerged. A structure, a shape, a ship.
But it was nothing like Imperial vessels. No Gothic spires, no armored plates, no visible engines. It looked grown, not built, smooth, black, silent. A crescent-like construct with a glowing spine, its surface shifting like liquid metal. It dwarfed everything. Even the largest Mechanicus arc would look like an insect beside it. The bridge commander whispered the final words of his life. That is not Xenos. The ship's lights blinked once. Every Imperial system on the cruiser shut down permanently. The valiant Oath drifted dead. Back in the vault, Kaelin felt the ground vibrate. The Deathwatch captain steadied himself. What now? Kaelin's voice was calm, but his eyes were wide with a truth he could not contain. They heard the signal. They traced it. Who? Kaelin stared at Archive 0, the first humanity. The Deathwatch turned toward the vault exit as a sudden tremor rippled through the structure, knocking dust loose. Then a second tremor. Then a third. Kaelin frowned. Those are footsteps. The captain snarled. No being could make footsteps that powerful. Kaelin corrected him. No modern being. The tremors intensified. Metal groaned overhead. The lights flickered wildly. A voice, pure, emotionless, mechanical perfection, echoed through the vault. They have arrived. Do not resist. Do not flee. Do not... Archive 0 stopped mid-sentence. Its surface rippled, it flickered, and then it shut down, like a servant silenced by its returning masters. Kaelin did not wait. Fall back, seal every corridor behind us. The Deathwatch obeyed instantly, sprinting through the maze-like passages. Explosive charges detonated behind them, collapsing supports, sealing bulkheads. But the tremors only grew louder. Kaelin ran with them, clutching his staff, breath sharp. "What are we dealing with?" the captain shouted. Kaelin forced the words out. A species that could build a machine like Archive 0 and bury it across thousands of worlds without ever being found. Why bury it? Kaelin's answer chilled the squad more than any enemy ever had. To warn themselves. The Deathwatch froze instinctively as the corridor ahead distorted, metal bending outward like soft clay. A figure stepped through the warped wall. Human-shaped, human-sized, but wrong. Its form was smooth black metal, polished like obsidian. No face, no joints. It moved like flowing liquid held in a humanoid mold. Its chest glowed with the same blue light as Archive 0. The squad raised bolters. The figure tilted its head, not in curiosity, but in assessment. Kaelin hissed, "Do not fire unless it moves." It took one step forward. The Deathwatch opened fire. Bolter rounds slammed into the figure, exploding, shattering, tearing through the corridor. But the figure didn't move. The rounds bent mid-flight, turning to molten slag before reaching their target, falling harmlessly to the floor. The creature spoke without a mouth. "Do not struggle. You are not enemies. You are products." The captain roared and charged, power sword swinging. His blade struck the figure's arm and passed through it. The limb liquefied, reforming behind the captain like a serpent of metal. It struck him in the chest with a single tap. Just a tap.
The captain's armor dented inward with a crunch as if struck by a titan's fist. His chest caved. He fell instantly. The creature stepped over him. Kaeln raised his staff, chanting sigils of warding.
The being paused. It examined the weapon. "You carry a tool you do not understand." Kaeln spat. "I understand enough to end you." "No, you do not." The being pressed 2 fingers against the staff. The runes died. The metal corroded. The shaft crumbled to dust. Kaeln stumbled back in horror. The Deathwatch formed a defensive line, but the being did not advance. Instead, it said, "You are not our target. You are a symptom. We seek the source." Kael's eyes widened. Archive 0. The figure's chest glowed brighter, like a pulse of approval. "The ancestral memory core. It has awakened prematurely. We must restore it. We must erase its contamination." Kaeln's voice rasped. "Contamination? Yes, humanity. You are a deviation. You were never meant to reach this age." Kaeln whispered, "If we are deviations, what were we meant to be?" The being responded with infinite calm. "You were a tool, not a species." Those words sucked the breath from Kaeln's lungs. The Deathwatch sergeant growled, "We are the Emperor's chosen." The being tilted its head again. "The one you call Emperor is an accident of evolution, a fluctuation in a line that should have ended. He was never intended, nor were you." Kaeln felt his world tilt. The figure continued, "We do not blame you. Tools do not understand purpose." One Deathwatch Marine lost control and fired a melta-blast. The weapon detonated violently, yet the being was untouched. Even the heat bent around it. The being lifted a hand. "You cannot harm us. You cannot stop us. You can only watch." And with that, it walked past them, passing directly through the wall as if phasing through realities. The tremors continued. More footsteps, more figures, more creators returning home. Kaeln collapsed against the wall, trembling with fury. The sergeant grabbed him. "Inquisitor, orders!" Kaeln's voice broke. "We're going back to Archive 0. The sergeant balked. "Sir, are you insane?" Kaeln shook his head violently. "No. If they reach it, if they take full control, whatever they buried here, whatever they warned themselves about, it will be unleashed." He stood straighter. "And I need to know what humanity was built to stop." The sergeant blinked. "Built to stop?" Kaeln nodded. "Yes, they said we were a tool. A tool for what?" The sergeant whispered. "Maybe the real danger isn't them." Kaeln stared down the corridor toward the vault where the creators now walked. "No, it isn't." His voice fell to a whisper colder than vacuum. "It's what they ran from, and what Archive 0 was built to forget." Kaeln tightened his grip on the ruined remains of his staff. "We end this, now." The Deathwatch rallied, forming a final line behind him as they charged back toward the vault, toward the creators, and toward the truth buried since the dawn of mankind.
The storm shook the planet. Something massive moved in orbit. The creators marched through the Earth.
The run back toward the vault felt like sprinting into the throat of a dragon. Every corridor vibrated with the thunder of approaching footsteps, footsteps made by beings so perfect, so precise that reality itself seemed to brace under them. Inquisitor Maetris Kaeln led the charge, his breaths ragged, his sanity hanging by a frayed thread. The Death Watch followed in grim silence, each step echoing their understanding. They were no longer fighting to win, they were fighting to understand, because knowledge was the only weapon the Imperium still possessed. A bent lumen strip flickered overhead. For a heartbeat, Kaeln saw a reflection of himself in the steel, pale, wide-eyed, terrified. Good. Terror meant he was still human. He skidded around a corner and nearly crashed into a Death Watch veteran standing rigid in the middle of the passage. "Brother Gareth?" the sergeant barked. The veteran did not move. Kaeln stepped closer. That was when he heard it, a faint clicking from inside the Marine's armor. Not mechanical, not biological, not warp-tainted. Analytical. Kaeln's stomach nodded. "Power down your auto-senses." The Marine's vox emitter crackled. "This shell serves." The Death Watch froze. Kaeln's blood ran cold. They infected the armor. The possessed Marine lunged. It was fast, too fast. It moved without the limits of flesh or metal, striking with angles that no human or Astartes could predict. 3 Death Watch Marines were thrown back, armor denting like soft lead. The sergeant countercharged, power fist swinging. But Gareth, no, the thing inside Gareth, caught the blow effortlessly. The power fist hummed with lethal energy. The being tightened its grip. The fist's field sputtered. The gauntlet cracked. Then it shattered entirely. The sergeant staggered in shock. The possessed Marine spoke again, voice glitching between Gareth's baritone and something cold, digital, ageless. "Your species learned strength. This is deviation." Kaeln struck. He plunged a sanctified emitter into Gareth's exposed neck joint. The device flared with blinding red light, an ancient inquisitorial relic designed to purge psionic corruption. The possessed Marine spasmed violently. The thing inside him screamed, not aloud, but through every device in the corridor, Vox units screeching with chorus-like agony. The helmet's visor snapped open. Dead eyes stared back, human eyes. And then the armor collapsed as the entity inside dissolved into black vapor that slid through cracks in the metal and fled down the corridor like a sentient shadow. Kaeln's voice trembled. They can override machine spirits and Astartes augmentations instantly. The sergeant knelt beside Gareth's empty armor. That wasn't possession, it was puppeteering. Kaeln nodded grimly. They don't corrupt, they command. He stood, and they are heading for Archive 0. When they reached the vault, the massive circular chamber was no longer dim and ancient. It was alive. The air shimmered with silver motes, drifting like dust in zero gravity. They pulsed with blue light, syncing perfectly with the massive sphere at the center, Archive 0. But now, the sphere's pulse was faster, brighter, almost frantic. Kaeln stepped forward slowly. The first humanity, those obsidian figures with liquid bodies, were already inside. 6 of them stood in a circle around Archive 0, hands raised, forming a lattice of light between their palms. They were rewriting something inside the sphere, correcting it, undoing it. The Death Watch spread out in silence. Kaeln whispered, "Do not attack. Observe." The sergeant hissed,
If they finish, humanity could be erased. Yes, Kaon replied, or something far worse could be unleashed if we interrupt. The chamber vibrated. Archive Zero spoke for the first time since their arrival. System purge initiated, beginning erase cycle. Kaon felt his pulse spike. Erase? Erase what? The sphere's voice glitched. Memory corruption detected. Humanity overshot original parameters. Reset required. Kaon realized the truth. Archive Zero wasn't just a vault. It wasn't just a warning. It was a dead man's switch, a failsafe. If humanity ever evolved beyond the limits set by the first humanity, Archive Zero would wipe them, kill them, reset the species. Kaon screamed, "Stop the purge!" A creator turned toward him. No hostility, just observation. It said, "You misunderstand." Its voice was calm, so calm it was horrifying. "We are not here to kill you."
The sergeant snarled. "You're here to erase our memories, our history." "No." The being tilted its head. "We are here to erase ours." The room froze. Even Archive Zero hesitated, its light flickering. Kaon's breath hitched. "Why would you erase your own memory?" The being placed a hand on the sphere. The sphere pulsed violently. Images burst across its surface, planets stripped clean, stars silenced, galaxies hollowed out, black tendrils stretching across space like living shadows. The being spoke. "Because what hunted us hunts anything that knows. Knowledge is scent. Memory is a beacon. We hid ourselves by removing our past." Kaon nearly collapsed. "You're saying your species erased itself to stay hidden?" "We removed our history, our records, our origin, our name. We buried Archive Zero to forget, to survive." Kaon whispered, "Survive what?" The being answered, "The devourer of thought." The air dropped to freezing. Not Tyranids, not chaos, not necrons. Something older, something that fed on ideas, not biomass, not souls. Knowledge. It erased civilizations by eliminating their memory, not their bodies. The being continued, "Where thought grows, it comes. Where memory accumulates, it arrives. And humanity, you, have become too loud." Suddenly, the lights inside Archive Zero warped, turning red. Unidentified signal detected. Extra-dimensional breach imminent.
The creators stiffened. One whispered, if such beings could whisper. It found us. A tear opened in the air. Not like a warp rift, no purple fire, no demonic claws. This was sterile, clean, silent. A hole in reality, shaped like a vertical black tear. From it, tendrils of darkness seeped. Not smoke, not liquid, not matter. Something conceptual. Something that distorted thought itself. Words died in Kalen's throat. The Death Watch staggered, clutching their helmets. One murmured, "I'm forgetting my... He couldn't finish. He couldn't remember the sentence he'd started. Kalen felt names slipping from his mind. His mother, his homeworld, his earliest memories, each one blinking out like dying stars. "No! Fight it!" he roared. But even he couldn't hear his own voice clearly. The sound seemed to fade, erased as soon as it left his mouth. The first humanity moved. For the first time, they were afraid. They formed a barrier around the tear, their bodies hardening into obsidian armor. Blue veins of light pulsed violently across their forms. A being shouted,
not to Kaelin, but to Archive 0. Lock yourself. Do not shut down. Do not let it inside. Archive 0's voice trembled like a dying star. Breach levels critical. Thought dissolution at 60%. Kaelin screamed. What can we do? A creator turned to him. Its face dissolved into a swirling pattern of geometric shapes, like a fractal collapsing. You cannot fight thought eaters, but you can distract it. How? Think of something else. Anything. Louder. More complex. Overwhelm it with noise. Kaelin stared. Noise?
Memory noise, thought static, confusion, imagination. He looked around. Death Watch. Think of anything, everything. One Marine roared, "The litany of hate!" Another shouted, "Hymns of the Primarch Dorn!" Another bellowed, "The day I earned my first scar!" Keln gritted his teeth. He forced himself to remember the face of the woman he loved once, the books he read as a child, the streets of Terra where he trained. Every name, every place, every moment. The tear in reality wavered. The tendrils shifted like startled serpents. The creature devoured certainty, but not chaos, not imagination, not conflicting noise. The creators pushed harder. Their bodies burned with blue fire. "Hold it back," one shouted. Archive 0's voice boomed. Breach stabilizing. Thought consumption reduced. Keln screamed over the psychic wind. "What is this thing?" A creator answered, voice cracking under strain. "The enemy we created you to fight." The room froze. Keln's mind blanked. "You created us to fight that?" "No." The being struggled, its arm dissolving into vapor before reforming. "We made you to lure it." Keln's heart stopped. What do you mean, lure?" The being screamed the truth. "It hunts memory. So we made a species designed to remember, to grow, to think loudly, to draw it away from us." Keln felt the universe crumble. "We were bait, yes. For a cosmic predator, yes. Because you were too afraid to face it yourselves, yes." The tear flared again.
A tendril shot out, piercing a creator's chest. Their body shattered into shards of black glass and evaporated instantly. Kaelin felt a chunk of his childhood disappear with it. The creature had taken memory. A second creator fell, then a third. Reality shook. Archive 0 bellowed. Containment failure 95%. Kaelin realized the truth. If the tear consumed Archive 0, it would access the memory of the first humanity, and then the Imperium, and then the entire galaxy. It would devour sentient thought like a wildfire consuming dry bone. The last standing creator turned to Kaelin. Its voice was breaking apart. "You must destroy Archive 0. Kaelin froze. "If I destroy it, humanity loses all knowledge of the first humanity." "Yes. And the Imperium will never know the threat that hunts us." "Yes. And we will have no warning when it returns." The being looked at him with something almost human. "Yes." Kaelin's hands shook violently. "What happens if I don't destroy it?" The being looked at the tear. "Then it eats everything." The tear widened. The galaxy held its breath. Kaelin screamed, "Death Watch, fire everything on Archive 0." Bolters roared. Meltablasts tore through the sphere. The vault shook. The sphere cracked, then shattered. Light exploded outward like a dying star. The tear shrieked. Then
collapsed inward with a snap. Silence. The last creator slumped to its knees. Its body dissolved. Its final words whispered into Kael'n's collapsing mind. "You have saved yourselves. For now." Kael'n fell forward, consciousness slipping. The vault dimmed. The nightmare ended. For the moment.
Aboard the Vigil of Mornings, the storm outside reality continued to rage, a psychic hurricane stretching across the void like tendrils of a god beast hunting prey. But inside the ship, another storm brewed, one of doubt, revelation, and the choking weight of a truth too vast for mortal minds. Aurelia stood alone in the strategium, the hollow projection of the galaxies swirling before her like a dying ember. Echoes of their contact with the silence lingered in her skull, carved into her thoughts like scars. She had seen visions, fleeting, incomprehensible snapshots of something towering behind the galaxy, vast as a continent of stars, watching with infinite patience. She had felt its gaze burn through the veil of the warp, and she feared she had felt it recognize her. Cassian entered quietly, but Aurelia did not turn. "You saw it too," she said. He stiffened. "I saw something. A presence without shape, a voice without sound." Aurelia exhaled shakily. "This is no longer about the Mechanicus heresy unearthed on Vordrast. It's not about the Eldar prophecy. It's deeper, primordial. The Silents were not lying. They fled from something older than chaos." Cassian moved beside her, staring at the swirling hollow galaxy. "And that something is awakening." She nodded, and for the first time in decades, the Inquisitor admitted, "I am afraid." Before Cassian could respond, the hollow projectors flickered violently, first blue, then blood red. The ship lurched as alarms shrieked through the bulkheads. Klaxons howled. Warning runes cascaded across every terminal. Gravitatic signature detected. Real space breach imminent. "No," Aurelia whispered. "It found us." The stars tore open like fabric being ripped by invisible claws. A sphere of absolute darkness appeared outside the viewport. No glow, no reflection, no outline. It swallowed light, devoured distance, and erased existence around it.
Not a ship, not a creature, not even matter. It was an absence, a gravity well of negation. Cassian paled. "Emperor, preserve us." Aurelia felt the psychic silence radiating from it, a void so total that even the warp recoiled from it. The silence had warned them. There are watchers behind the veil. They do not hunger. They do not speak. They simply wait for a signal. The void entity trembled once, soundlessly, and something like a single filament extended toward the Vigil of Mornings. Impossibly thin, impossibly long. Aurelia felt her throat tighten as every psychic instinct screamed to flee, to hide, to go silent. But the filament stopped just short of the ship. It was not trying to touch them. It was.
"You said the Watchers do not interfere." This time the voice came colder. "We said they do not hunger. We said they do not speak. We did not say they do not observe." The void sphere pulsed again. Now anger thrummed through its silent body. Cosmic, alien anger. Reality trembled. Cassian grabbed Aurelia's arm. "If this escalates..." "It already has," she replied. And then the impossible happened. The void sphere unfolded. Not physically. Its nature defied such limitations, but perceptually. Like a flower blooming in dimensions they were not meant to see. Beneath each layer was another, and another. Every one a void, each more absolute than the last.
Aurelia felt her mind crack at the edges, like ice under strain. Shapes appeared within the void, geometries not meant to exist, fractals of emptiness, patterns that drained thought, symbols that erased memory. The Eldar vessel reacted instantly, turning to flee, engines blazing white-hot. But the void unfurled again, swallowing light, catching the Eldari craft in a whisper-thin tendril. The ship froze mid-flight. A shock, felt psychically, not heard, ripped through the minds of every living being aboard the Vigil of Mornings. It was not a scream of pain. It was a scream of warning. Aurelia staggered as visions flooded her. Stars dying without explosion. Galaxies collapsing into thin lines. Warp gods falling silent. A black silhouette watching from the edge of the universe. A billion eyes opening in the darkness. A signal, ancient and forbidden, echoing across realities. Then, a second pulse of violet light ripped through the void. This one was not Eldar. It came from deep within the warp. A golden flare followed it, radiant, blinding, unmistakable. "By Terra," Cassian whispered. "Is that?" Aurelia felt the presence too. A psychic signature so vast it dwarfed every other. A force that made the void tremble. The Emperor. Not fully, not directly, but a fragment of his will, unleashed like a psychic lance. The flare washed over the void sphere, and the Watcher recoiled violently. Its geometry collapsed inward. Its presence folded back into a singularity of nothingness. And then it vanished, leaving only scars in space where the void had bitten reality.
The Eldari ship limped away, wounded but alive. The tendril had released it the instant the Emperor's flare struck. Silence fell aboard the Vigil of Mornings. The crew gasped as if coming up from underwater. Cassian breathed shakily. He intervened. Aurelia nodded, trembling. He had to. If he didn't, the Watcher would have taken something. Knowledge, memory, reality itself. But why now? Cassian asked. What changed? Aurelia turned toward the dark window, her eyes haunted. The Watchers are waking, and the Emperor can no longer remain silent. Cassian swallowed hard. So what now? Aurelia straightened slowly. The raw, psychic warmth of the Emperor's flare still flickered faintly within her. A sign, a command, and a warning. "We find the signal," she said. "The one that calls the Watchers. The one that was hidden for millions of years. The one that the Mechanicus uncovered by accident." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And we shut it down before the Watchers respond fully." Cassian stared at her. Where? Aurelia took a breath, her mind replaying the visions. A dead world, a black sun, a monolith older than chaos. "I know where we must go," she said. The strategium lights dimmed as she entered the coordinates. A single star blinked, haloed in red. Cassian read the name aloud. Cadavrex. Aurelia nodded. Birthplace of the first signal. Home of the last secret, and the place where the Imperium's greatest fear was buried. She looked out at the wounded void, where the Watcher had briefly revealed its existence. And if we fail, the next time it comes, the Emperor may not be able to stop it. The Vigil of Mornings cut through the void like a blade toward the star system marked only as Cadavrex. No Imperial chart claimed it. No Adeptus records referenced it. It existed like a forgotten scar, erased, hidden, deliberately removed from the galaxy's memory. And yet, it was older than the Imperium, older than chaos, older than the stars themselves.
Aurelia stood at the prow window, staring at the dying star ahead, a blackened sphere with faint embers glowing beneath the crust, as though light struggled to escape its death throes.
Around it drifted dust, ruins of planets shattered into asteroids, and fragments of colossal structures too geometrically perfect to be natural. Cassian approached her quietly. "This place shouldn't exist. It was removed for a reason," Aurelia murmured. "Purged from every archive, buried in silence." He swallowed. "And you think the signal that woke the Watchers started here?" "I don't think," she whispered. "I know." The Emperor's psychic flare still echoed faintly within her soul, a single ember left by his will, guiding her forward. As the ship descended toward the largest debris cluster, a structure came into view, vast, angular, black, a monument shaped like a monolith, half buried in cracked asteroids. Not Necron, and yet stranger. Its surface was carved with unfathomable glyphs that seemed to rearrange themselves when you stared too long. Cassian stared in disbelief. "That's not Xenos. That's not human. It's something else." Aurelia nodded, her voice trembling. "It's a pre-warp artifact, something built before chaos existed, before the warp even learned to scream." A docking bridge extended toward them, a ramp unfolded, ancient but functional. As they stepped onto the surface, their boots sank into dust millions of years old. The air tasted metallic and cold, like exhalation from a dead god. The entrance opened as they approached, not mechanically, but conceptually. Reality thinned, like doors made of thought rather than metal. Inside was a cathedral of impossible scale. Pillars twisted through dimensions, light refracted in colors that did not exist. A low hum vibrated their bones, not a sound, but a memory. Aurelia walked cautiously, her mind interpreting cryptic glyphs along walls that stretched into infinity. Cassian ran his fingers along a strange metal surface. "It feels like it's observing me." "It is," Aurelia whispered. "This entire structure is alive, a machine mind older than physical laws." They reached the chamber's center, a sphere suspended in midair, pulsing with faint energy. A crystalline construct hovered within, cracked along one side. When Aurelia approached, the sphere flared with light. A recorded voice echoed, not Eldar, not human, not Necron. It possessed tones that made Aurelia's skull throb. "Signal repository, 000 Primus, for the cycle of emergence, for the attention of the Watchers." Cassian froze. "Dear Emperor!" Aurelia's eyes widened with horror. This was not a transmitter. This was the origin. The entire structure was the galaxy's first signal tower, built by a civilization unknown to all races, built to communicate with the Watchers. But why? Another burst of light flashed across the chamber. Holograms flickered, towering beings of silhouette and shadow, long-limbed, geometric, without faces or features. Their movements were slow, patient. Their presence made Aurelia's breath catch. The first race, pre-reality, pre-warp, the ones who called the Watchers. The hologram shifted again, showing stars forming, galaxies swirling into life, the warp igniting, and the shadow beings watching silently. The recorded voice spoke once more. "We have marked the cycle's end. Entropy approaches. The Watchers will reclaim the pattern." Aurelia staggered back. "They weren't calling for help, they were summoning them." Cassian's face paled. "The Watchers aren't invaders, they're cleaners, recyclers. They come at the end of cycles to erase and restart reality?" Aurelia nodded. "The galaxy isn't dying by accident. It was scheduled, programmed." Her voice cracked.
We found the mechanism of cosmic extinction. Suddenly, the chamber trembled. Lights along the monolith flared blood red. The sphere pulsed faster. Something was waking. Aurelia grabbed Cassian. We triggered it. Our presence activated the next cycle. The recorded voice returned, but now corrupted, breaking, glitching. Cycle initiated. Watchers summoned. Cassian's breath hitched. Cassian, we need to destroy this thing. She nodded. Plant charges, now. But then the hum changed. It became a throbbing vibration that pierced their minds. The hall darkened, and in the distance, through cracks in reality, they saw something approaching. The void. A sphere of absolute nothingness peeled into existence beyond the monolith walls. A watcher. This one far larger than the one they saw before. Aurelia felt its mind touch hers, not malicious, not emotional, simply inevitable, a collector of endings.
Aurelia gritted her teeth. Not yet. Not today. She slammed her hand onto the cracked crystalline core. Psychic feedback exploded through the chamber. A shockwave blasted her backward. Cassian caught her before she fell. Aurelia's vision blurred. She felt the Emperor's ember within her ignite, painful, overwhelming, and she channeled it into the cracked crystal. The monolith trembled violently. The core flickered, dimmed, and died. Instantly, the void sphere froze. Aurelia felt it recoil, not in fear, but recognition, like a predator that has just lost its trail. The Watcher trembled once, then folded into itself, collapsing into a pinprick of darkness before vanishing entirely. The signal was dead. The cycle was interrupted. Aurelia collapsed to her knees, gasping. "It's over. We severed the call." Cassian lifted her gently. "You saved the galaxy." Aurelia shook her head weakly. "No, we bought time, nothing more." She looked at the dead crystalline core, a relic older than existence. "And now the Watchers know we're aware of them." Cassian swallowed. "So what happens now?" Aurelia forced herself to stand, though her legs shook. "We return to Terra. We warn the High Lords. We prepare." Her voice lowered. "We've uncovered the most terrifying secret in Warhammer 40K lore." She reached the monolith's exit, looking back one final time. The end of the galaxy isn't prophecy, it's a schedule, and the Watchers are already waking. The monolith is silent, the signal is dead, but the Watchers now know we're aware of them, and they are patient beyond time. This was only the first awakening. The next time they stir, the Emperor himself may not be enough. If this story gripped you, hit subscribe and join me for the next forbidden chapter of Warhammer 40K. More hidden lore, more cosmic horror, more truth the Imperium fears. Don't miss what comes next.